They humiliated his wife at the gala. He shattered their $700 million merger on the spot. Crystal chandeliers were still quivering from their unveiling when Ayanna Hale stepped onto the marbled floor, her midnight gown folding around her like wings that refused to bow. All eyes lifted, some in awe, some in calculation, as the wife of the city's fastest-rising chief executive took her first breath inside the Markham Foundation Gala. Marcus was still at the press line answering polite questions about the pending merger, so Ayanna entered alone, unaware that the room had already labeled her presence an audition. Silvered whispers slid across round tables. Why was she here? Did she understand this pedigree? In the corner, Serena Markham, the heir apparent whose signature graced every invitation, tightened her smile into something thin enough to cut glass. She lifted her champagne flute and motioned to her brothers. Tonight, she murmured, they would test the outsider's poise. A server appeared, trembling, to confirm that Ayanna's seat had been moved for optimal photography, a lie that set her adrift among strangers. Still, Ayanna smiled, choosing grace over suspicion. She did not notice the empty chair reserved for her at Marcus's side vanish behind a velvet partition, nor did she see Serena nod toward the band, signaling the first small insult. The string quartet shifted into a dirge that swallowed conversation, and the room leaned forward, eager for the game to begin. What they did not yet know was how quickly polite cruelty can ignite into public fire. In the hush between violin strokes, a waiter who had served the Markhams for 3 decades accidentally brushed past Ayanna, spilling burgundy wine across the front of her gown. Gasps rippled, but Serena's laugh sliced through them like crystal breaking. She cooed apologies that dripped with condescension, dabbing Ayanna's shoulder with a monogrammed napkin, the color of ivory privilege. While Ayanna dabbed at the stain, Serena leaned closer, voice sugar-sweet. Silk just does not forgive mistakes, does it? Some fabrics simply are not meant for everyone. The words stung like a slap, disguised as etiquette. Across the room, the patriarch, Harrison Markham, watched, lips curling as if approving a dress rehearsal. Cameras pivoted, hungry for embarrassment, and Ayanna felt the heat of their lenses. She steadied herself, refusing to allow her voice to crack, yet every breath tasted of humiliation and fermentation. At that moment, Marcus appeared, smile fading as he registered the scene, the stain, the laughter. He moved toward his wife, but Harrison intercepted him with a firm handshake, steering him toward the stage where a spotlight waited. "We should toast your future," Harrison declared, oblivious to the crimson blotch that carried a message louder than champagne. Marcus glanced back, heart punching against ribs, but the band swelled and drowned his protest. The patriarch raised a glass, forcing Marcus to mirror the gesture. Ayanna stood alone in the glare of gossip, and the cameras kept rolling. What insult would they script next? Marcus's toast sounded steady, yet beneath each syllable rumbled an approaching storm. He praised synergies, communities, shared values, but his eyes never left Ayanna's trembling hands. When the crowd applauded, he breathed a single vow that only his wife could hear. "This ends tonight." Slipping from the stage, he made for the corridor, intent on finding a private space to restore her dignity. But halfway there, a pair of Markham cousins blocked his path. Their thin smiles spoke volumes. One whispered that, after the merger, they planned to ease him into a more advisory role, freeing him to focus on urban initiatives where he would surely excel. They congratulated him on being progressive optics and suggested he might leverage his community to build goodwill. Marcus felt the air choke his lungs, yet he kept his posture straight, nodding like a man cataloging every slight for later. Behind the cousins, a board director raised a glass in silent warning. Swallow pride and sign or watch years of labor crumble. Marcus thanked them, turned away, then caught the word quota drifting from their lips as laughter erupted. His jaw tightened. Meanwhile, Ayanna had disappeared to the powder room, led by a concerned server. Unbeknownst to her, 2 heiresses followed, smartphones gripped like daggers, ready to slice her confidence further. Marcus scanned the exits, heartbeat thundering. Where was Ayanna, And what new punishment waited beyond that gilded door? The powder room glimmered with antique mirrors, each reflecting Ayanna's wounded poise from 10 angles. As she blotted the stain, Shelby Markham entered with a friend whose diamond choker flashed like warning lights. Their voices dropped to a pitch meant to wound without witnesses. They lamented how certain people lacked breeding to survive these circles, how legacy could not be bought with tech stock, how Marcus would soon hand real control to seasoned professionals. Ayanna's spine stiffened as she realized the ridicule was rehearsal for a future boardroom coup. She stepped from the stall, eyes fierce, and thanked them for their unsolicited guidance. Shock flickered across their faces, but smirks quickly returned, accompanied by clandestine photos of her ruined silk. Ayanna left before tears could betray her. Yet, under chandeliers that now felt like interrogation lamps, she faltered, dialing Marcus with trembling fingers. Before he could answer, Harrison announced that final contracts had arrived early, and witnesses were gathering near the signature table. The crowd migrated, buzzing toward honeyed scandal. Ayanna's call dropped. She raced toward the hall, determined to warn her husband, only to see him shaking hands with Harrison, signing pen already uncapped. Would she reach him before ink sealed their fate? Pen hovering, Marcus sensed Ayanna before he saw her. Her eyes, red-rimmed yet blazing, told him everything words could not. Harrison began a florid introduction about unity and generational prosperity, but Marcus caught only fragments. Legacy, stewardship, inevitable consolidation. Flashbulbs strobed while the audience encircled the table. Ayanna stepped forward, her stained gown vivid under hot lights, and placed a hand on Marcus's arm. Silence spread like spilt oil. Harrison's smile curdled. He gestured for security, uttering sharp commands to remove the distraction, but Marcus interposed, voice calm yet iron-laced, declaring his wife belonged beside him more than any hedge fund vulture present. Harrison hissed that humiliations were simply rites of passage into old money. Marcus's gaze drifted to the contract, to pen, to his wife's ruined silk. He asked Harrison whether he believed in rites of reciprocity. Confusion flickered. Then arrogance reclaimed the patriarch's grin. Counsel whispered that shareholders expected signature within the hour, or stock instability would drown the company. Ayanna whispered only one word: dignity. Marcus exhaled, straightened, and closed the pen. Harrison's brow furrowed. The crowd murmured. Marcus asked for a private room to confer. Harrison refused. Marcus nodded, understanding yet committing. Turning to the expectant crowd, he prepared to speak. What would happen if he chose truth over fortune? Marcus cleared his throat, and the hall fell under the weight of possibility. He thanked everyone for coming, praised the Markham legacy, then pivoted. He recalled watching his mother scrub chemical stains from his father's overalls after night shifts in a Markham-owned factory, a story the room never expected. He described the smell of lye, the way it clung to lungs, the way it taught him that power without conscience corrodes everything it touches. Faces paled. Harrison motioned to cut the microphone, but technicians hesitated when Marcus raised his palm. He declared that mergers can amplify good or magnify rot. And tonight, he had tasted rot in laughter, aimed at the woman he loves. He did not name names. He painted predators with strokes that landed squarely on the Markham crest. He spoke of creating value rooted in respect, not charity disguised as control. The room oscillated between admiration and alarm. Publicists drafted statements on glowing screens. Marcus ended with a promise. By dawn, the world would know where he stands. Applause hesitated, scattered, then roared from unexpected corners. Harrison's jaw tightened like a vice. Marcus led Ayanna toward the exit, but reporters swarmed, asking if he truly intended to forfeit a fortune. Marcus paused, his silence screaming louder than any denial. Would he still walk away come morning? Dawn never arrived quietly. Before sunrise, financial channels blared, breaking news that Hale Industries might scuttle the merger, wiping projected billions from valuations. Pundits debated whether Marcus was bold or reckless, emphasizing potential layoffs if the deal collapsed. An op-ed from a Markham ally suggested Marcus lacked the temperament to helm a conglomerate of such magnitude. Internal emails leaked, revealing a succession plan that would sideline him within one fiscal quarter. Furious, Marcus convened his executive team, only to discover divisions already seated. His chief financial officer argued fiduciary duty demanded signature. Investors had bet pensions on this union. A vice president confessed he had been promised a Markham board seat. Betrayal bled through every cubicle. While they argued, Marcus's phone buzzed with testimonials about Markham pollution in minority neighborhoods. A grandmother recounted water turning metallic after factory expansion. Marcus listened, fists clenched, and new lines were no longer negotiable. Yet the stock exchange threatened suspension if clarity was not provided by midday. The empire he built teetered between conscience and collapse. Ayanna entered the boardroom, still wearing last night's gown, stain dried to rust. She reminded them that every empire begins as one person's conviction. Marcus dismissed the meeting and ordered his driver toward the old neighborhood. What revelation awaited there to justify detonating his own kingdom? The neighborhood smelled of nostalgia and neglect, cracked sidewalks sprouting dandelions where children once chased fireflies. Marcus stood outside the crumbling community center where he learned calculus and courage. Inside, Miss Lenora, the retired teacher who nurtured generations, waited with a cardboard folder thicker than grief. She handed him documents, medical reports, soil samples, photographs of riverbanks turned slick with iridescent sludge. Timestamps traced a timeline that intersected perfectly with Markham runoff. Across faded pages, Marcus found his father's signature on hazard complaints that were never answered, illnesses never compensated, funerals funded by bake sale money. Ayanna wiped tears as Miss Lenora revealed a ledger of quiet settlements meant to silence families who could not afford lawyers. The folder was dynamite disguised as paper. Marcus realized the merger would bind him to decades of unrepentant harm. Miss Lenora asked whether he remembered the cough that killed his father. Marcus nodded, voice cracking. She placed a trembling hand on his cheek and reminded him that leadership means choosing whose children breathe clean air. Steel calm settled over him. He called counsel, instructing them to arrange a press conference at the gala hall that very afternoon. As the limousine sped toward destiny, Marcus drafted a single sentence for the speech. Would the world listen or watch him burn? The gala hall looked unchanged, yet the air crackled as though walls knew a reckoning approached. Journalists packed aisles. Live streams pulsed across platforms. Harrison Markham lounged on stage beside the untouched contract, confidence draped like one more bespoke tuxedo. Marcus entered, folder under arm, Ayanna by his side, her stain now a badge. Without greeting, he recited the sentence he had written. We refuse to merge with a legacy that profits from poisoned silence. Gasps erupted. He opened the folder, displaying each photograph on giant screens meant for celebratory slideshows. Children with respirators, rivers glowing unnatural, settlement checks marked confidential. He named dates, departments, supervisors, all tied to the Markham Empire. Harrison lunged forward, shouting defamation. But Marcus produced memos bearing Harrison's signature authorizing hush payments. The hall descended into frenzy, security unsure whom to protect. Marcus lifted the contract, tore it clean through, and let halves drift like defeated flags to the floor. He declared Hale Industries would pursue justice-focused growth, even if market vultures circled. Thunderous applause surged from workers, activists, even investors who smelt long-term value and integrity. Harrison was escorted off stage by frantic counsel. Yet outside the hall, rumors swirled of lawsuits vicious enough to bankrupt Hale within weeks. As Marcus left the podium, exhilaration met vertigo. Had he liberated his company or doomed it? 72 hours later, the narrative rewrote itself again. Hashtags praising Marcus trended beside dire forecasts predicting ruin. Then came an unexpected call from Artemis Green, chief executive of a renewable energy titan founded by a Black woman who once competed with Marcus for venture funding. She offered a partnership worth nearly triple the Markham deal, centered on community reinvestment and transparent governance. The offer electrified markets, flipping fear into frenzy. Regulators opened an inquiry into Markham environmental practices. Their stock plunged, board members fled, subpoenas followed. At a televised town hall, Ayanna spoke about reclaiming power through refusal rather than assimilation, her words echoing across living rooms like a hymn for self-worth. Viewers wept. Some raged. None looked away. Marcus watched from backstage, heart swelling. A producer whispered ratings were shattering records. Yet as applause thundered, Marcus's phone buzzed, an anonymous message showing his headquarters surrounded by picketers demanding immediate wage increases, emboldened by his moral stance. Victory had opened new fronts of accountability. Marcus slipped the phone into his pocket and stepped into the spotlight beside Ayanna. Lights flared, the crowd roared, and for one breath the future glittered with possibility. But behind the cameras, powerful interests were already plotting their counterstrike. The next chapter waited in those shadows, sharpening its claws. If that stand for dignity fired you up, share this story. Let every boardroom know respect is non-negotiable.